Hello, my name is Stephanie Jirard. I am the Chief Diversity Officer here at Shippensburg University. It is my honor and privilege to have my dear friend, Dr. Jen Clements, Professor of Social Work, with me. We are here today because, as you are well aware, Shippensburg University is a public university. And as a public university, people from the public can use our space to say what they will. And sometimes what they say is offensive. Even some members of our community say offensive things that demean people based on race, gender, sex, orientation, expression, identity, ability. Even though we, as a collective, may find those statements offensive and harmful, you know that the First Amendment protects that type of expression. As a public university, we cannot censor that type of expression. And why Dr. Clements is here today is to give us some helpful tips for how to deal with people when they come to campus and they say hurtful and harmful things. Now, before we have this little discussion, I do want to say that the law requires Shippensburg, as a government agency, to allow people their voice. That is, we are not a private entity that can censor or shut down viewpoints because we don't like them or because we don't agree. Now, I get many members of the community who tell me, you know what, Jirard, I understand what the First Amendment means, but I understand these people have rights, but, and then they always seek for our help to shut these people down. Rest assured, if I had a magic wand that could protect all of us from things that were harmful and offensive, I would wave it today. But society, especially in America, we are a society based on freedom. Democracy is based on freedom. And the price of that freedom is sometimes we have to hear and see things we do not like. I often say the First Amendment actually protects speech you don't want to hear. And simply because people say offensive things does not mean they're actually threatening. To be a threat, it has to be very targeted. Like, hey, Jirard, I'm coming after you. People who just make generic statements, under the law, it's not a threat. So now I turn to Dr. Clements, who's going to tell us some of the techniques, particularly, as you know, because we had a religious group come on campus and really say some pretty outrageous and vile comments. Tell us, how should we handle those types of opportunities that we have when these people come to our campus?
Yeah, so I'm actually trained through an organization called Silent Witness PA, and the goal of that particular group is to make sure that events stay safe, but allow for that free speech to still happen. And so one of the things that I often say when these kinds of groups come to campus is that we immediately gave that group power by showing up, responding, and listening. And that's what their hope is. And so a lot of these groups, not this exact group, but many groups that have come on campus, people are familiar with Wellsboro Baptist Church and Repent America, a lot of these groups that come on campus, their goal is to get into a situation with us. And so there's actually history of these groups, these hate groups, I'll say, basically funding their work by coming to campuses like ours and getting into an altercation where a student might throw a water bottle or university police might physically remove them from a location, or somebody might shove into them. If students who were at the protests remembered that there was one of the people there had their video camera going constantly and she was panning it through the crowd, because that is their intent. So their full intention is to get us into a situation where they can sue the university and receive money to keep funding this kind of hate speech that they're basically engaging in. And so one of the things that I think is really important, and as I was going through the crowd last week and talking to folks, don't give that group your power. And so as soon as you engage with them, you've given up your power. Your power is to walk away and leave. So if they had had no one to speak to, so if there had been one or two students there or nobody there, they would have left. but instead they engaged with 20 or so students for a long period of time because people were engaging with them. And in a lot of ways, I think the students who were there, some of them were having fun, right? It's fun to debate. We don't agree.
Right.
And so I'm going to push your buttons, you're going to push mine, and it stayed safe the whole time.
Right.
And so some students were like, this is fun, and that's great. That's part of that can be the fun part about the First Amendment. But some students were deeply upset by what was being said, by the signs that were there, the fact that they brought children. There was many things that were upsetting. But it was all well within their rights. And so the way to remove that situation is to leave. And I stress that over and over and over again. So it was like, you've given your power away by staying and engaging. You retain your power by deciding not to engage and walking away.
Right. And I think, what I often say is the remedy for bad speech is good speech.
Correct.
The remedy for speech you don't like is louder speech. But for these particular groups that are hate groups, that's not necessarily the remedy.
Right.
The remedy is indeed to ignore, to walk away, to, as you say, to diffuse the situation, and then regroup later, take what they've said, and perhaps have a love-in, make sure that these people who were deeply offended feel supported and included at SHIP.
And some of those things were happening. So the president of Students Advocating for Equality, which is our GSA on campus, they were walking around saying, hey, let's go to the SAFE office. This is upsetting. And he literally was saying how he was recruiting from the event because he found folks who were like, oh, you're great. You're part of our team. Let's talk about that a little bit more. The director of our Pride Center, she was there supporting students and encouraging them. Lots of staff from the Cub. And so students who were seeing the protest might not have seen all the side conversations that were happening. And so my hope is that there was love happening even in that moment, because we were encouraging and supporting students and giving them what they needed to hopefully walk away. But one of the nice things that happened, and relatively quickly, is some students started playing music at the Cub.
Right.
And so that would have been, had we been able to redirect the energy, and I know some students went over there, and we certainly encouraged folks to go there. The more we had shifted into kind of a different dynamic and give our energy to something that's positive and encouraging and accepting and open, which is the community that clearly our students want, because they reacted so strongly. And so in those moments when people feel so strongly about those kinds of words that people are saying and the hate speech that is basically being shared, one of the things is that, it encourages me because I was like, the students were upset, and I love that.
Right.
And that made me actually feel good about our campus. So even though that felt really anxious and stressful for folks, I was like, wow, look at these folks. Look at these students sitting here that I might not have looked at them and thought, oh yeah, they're a supporter of LGBT folks, or oh, they're a supporter, they're working on anti-racism, or they're working on being, dealing with sexism. I look at them and think maybe not, and then all of a sudden you're looking at them and you're like, holy cow, they're on my team.
Right.
This is my crew. And so that's what I saw. So if anything, it was exhausting on a number of levels, but you walk away from that and you're like, yeah, we've got really amazing students here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the way we discover that, unfortunately, is sometimes in stress and sometimes in drama.
Yeah.
And of course, you wouldn't know who is who necessarily, and that's because the First Amendment allows people to recruit, and that's what the group was trying to do here. And indeed, Shippensburg University, as a collective, condemns hate, condemns racism, condemns misogyny, condemns anti-trans actions and speech. We as a university do not endorse these particular groups at all, but they have a right to come because Shippensburg is a public street, essentially. Any public grounds are open to the public, and they are part of the public. It doesn't mean we support them.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, anything else that I haven't asked or that you'd like to end with?
I think the takeaway for me is that when you're in those kinds of situations and you're finding yourself escalated and feeling upset and things like that, look for the helpers. And so I love that Mr. Rogers quote from a long time ago. He basically talked about in moments of crisis there are helpers and you just need to find them. So we were there and we were trying to help folks and find your friends and be able to connect. And I tried to say, hey, go grab a friend and go grab a coffee and go process what you just saw. and have a deeper conversation about it, maybe with a peer from class that you didn't know was an advocate of yours. And so that's the most important thing. So look for the helpers, shift the energy, don't add to the hate speech. If we walk away, there was no flame to be had. They would have just left. And so that's the takeaway for me, is just don't give them energy.
So grateful, Professor, for all of your work and for coming in today. And of course, you can find us anywhere here on SHIP.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good one.
Thanks, you as well.